right, now, Mr. Michelle's, it
I'm
is
sorry,
your...
1 second. Your other, what is that, 6D? Is that this MOU?
MOU.
2-8.
That's for 2-8. I put other
Or
on there as
special-
sort
special.
of...
Yeah,
order.
that's for, this will be 2-8.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
I put other on there as a
Gotcha.
catch-all in case we needed it.
Gotcha.
In case I missed one or something like that. Okay. Now, Mr. Michelle's, please make your presentation on the certification issues you've been bringing to our
Okay, yeah,
attention.
just sorting myself out. Let's see, for the record, I'm Chris Michelle's. I'm a retired Los Alamos staff member at one point, 25 years ago. And my interest in this is simply as a citizen, and also as the fact that I've been working on law enforcement issues, well, statewide law enforcement issues for the last 5.5 years. Mostly I've been Santa Fe at addressing the Law Enforcement Academy Board. So for today, first off, what kind of time do we have to deal with?
I mean, please do keep it as brief as possible.
As you can tell, it's hard to do this in 5 minutes. It might be more possible to do it in 20.
Okay, let's shoot for around 15, okay? Or you're gonna lose me because I don't have that much of an attention span.
Okay. And for the record, the papers I have in front of me and what we're dealing with have been provided, copies of them to all the board members and Mr. Ernest. So you'll have them for reference. So I brought one copy, which I will give to the secretary for your record.
thank you.
So the first thing I would draw your attention to, and which you may or may not be aware of, is this is a statewide problem. It's just manifesting here in Albuquerque as it is in the rest of the state. I haven't appeared before this group before because I was trying to deal with the problem with the Law Enforcement Academy Board. Though I think what you're up against here is that the Law Enforcement Academy Board is not dealing with the issue, so it may behoove you to try to deal with it yourself. The problem that we have, and I'm just from the email I sent you, I'm looking at this from my notes, is the history is important. The history of the Academy goes back to 1969. It's established as a post, it's the National Police Standards Organization, which the Santa Fe office, the Academy up there, belongs to. They are the New Mexico Post Organization. They are responsible for setting police standards for the basic curriculum across the state. They're also required by part of their charter, which there's a model charter for those posts which these people are supposed to follow, which is how you develop your curriculum, how you develop your testing, and how you develop your lesson plans. Is basically, as you would expect in an educational effort, is trying to present to the police training in an orderly way. Unfortunately, what happened is we've abandoned that. That's listed in some detail in the document which shows the history of the LEA. We basically walked away from that whole program beginning in 2004 and again more dramatically in 2013. In 2013, as again I lay out in the documents provided, in 2013 we destroyed the Law Enforcement Academy and the Law Enforcement Academy curriculum.
What, excuse me, Kim, would you tell me who you're referring to when you say we?
Oh, they, the board. The Law Enforcement Academy board and the director first they destroyed the academy staff. In 2013, they appointed a new director, Gordon Eden, or no, I take it back. DPS secretary at the time, Gordon Eden. Later, of course, he was the chief of police down here in Albuquerque. You know it well. Eden put in a new director, Jack Jones from Albuquerque, who you may or may not know, who was the director of the academy, and Jack proceeded to wipe out the staff. That's a matter of record.
Who's the current director?
The current director was recently appointed as Kelly. I forget her last name. She was just appointed. She comes out of Alaska. Her background is not suitable for the job. Well, she's their appointment anyway.
Okay,
Anyway, she is Kelly is the current job. The director that just left was Stefan Marshall, who I've had many dealing with.
and he was the former FBI?
Yes, he was, and he resigned in January.
I see, okay.
The acting director was Augustus Fons, who was formerly associated with Hobbs Training. And he's now the Deputy Secretary of DPS. The current DPS Secretary, Mark Shea, also he used to be with the Academy. The best description of, I refer you again, I've got a chronology here of the events from the founding of the Academy to this point. Perhaps more of interest to you right now, and what I would raise to your question, which you probably aren't aware of, is the fact that this is the complete suit. What I did is copy one of the attachments is the cover letter on this suit. It's a lawsuit that recently became available. And it became available because it was part of the deal with the opening up the files on Pete Casadas' many incidents. You're probably aware of that because they've been all over the press. The former chief of state police, Casadas, apparently ran up a bill of about $1.9 million in settlements for his many questionable actions. And as part of the opening up the record, which the government decided to do, another record that was opened up was the lawsuit against the instructors who were terminated in 2013 by the director, Jack Jones.
The LEA instructor.
The LEA director, yeah.
Right, instructors, right.
Yeah, so those four, so what you have here, and you have as part of the records I provided with you, is the four instructors' lawsuit against the Academy and DPS. The people named on the suit, just to show you how what you're dealing with here, Gordon Eden, who was a former DPS secretary, Jack Jones, who was the director, Mark Shea, who's the current DPS secretary. Also noted within the suit are Scott Weaver, the most recently departed DPS secretary. I mean, you're talking about some of the top law enforcement people in the state. This is the DPS regime. 4 different DPS directors in a row are involved in this lawsuit. And the current one, Mark Shea, and I encourage you to look into this case for what it provides. The current Mark Shea is the one you would have to rely upon to address what we're talking about today, which is the certification process for your officers. Because Mark Shea and the Law Enforcement Academy Board up in Santa Fe are the people that drive that process, and they're the people that actually do the certification. So if their certification process is corrupt, your certification process is corrupt.
Can I just
Yes.
make a minor
Yes.
effort to sort of redirect how we're focused on this? I think they are our officers. I think we should refer to them as APD officers.
Well, that's
because
fine.
we are
Okay.
not part of
You're
APD, we're simply
No, no.
oversight. And I just would, I'd like to, keep it,
Okay, well, I mean, direct you can understand why I would refer to them as your officers, because
Well,
you're an APD board.
well,
I mean,
we're not.
you're an Albuquerque board.
We live in Albuquerque and we have oversight over Albuquerque.
I live in
Police
Santa Fe, so they're not my officers.
Department.
Can we also just kind of distill this down into what the portion that you think that we would be responsible for? Because
certainly.
we don't have oversight
No,
of
no.
the LEA board
No.
and how that certification process is done there.
Absolutely.
So
But
just to kind of
The
help
re-
conserve your time.
no, the reason I opened it up this way is to say, if you're thinking about this problem being solved in Santa Fe, it's not going to be. From all the record, it's not going to be. It was created in Santa Fe. It won't be solved in Santa Fe.
And how would you, in 50 words or less, typify what the problem is?
Right now, today,
Yeah.
the problem I came here to address is the certification process of the police officers of APD.
Okay.
How do they get a certification?
Right.
Because I checked the APD policies, and it says, which again are included in your packet, and the APD policy says, if you're a commissioned officer, commission means you're a sworn officer, you have a badge, a gun, etc. To be a commissioned officer in Albuquerque and Rio Rancho, you must be a certified officer, which means you have a certification from the Law Enforcement Academy.
Right.
Now, the way the process is currently being used is illegal, and that's what my concern that brought me here, because what we're doing today, and what we've been doing through all the years I've seen the LEA is the director brings a list for certification to the board at their meeting, and they meet by law. They meet 4 times a year. So he brings a list of candidates to be ratified. Now, really what's going on here is it's as if they've been certified and he's bringing them to the board to be ratified. Well, it just doesn't work that way by law. By law, it was changed in 1993. Up until 1993, you could argue that was a correct process, because up until 1993, the director did in fact, by statute, certify the officers. In 1993, the law changed. I provided that statute to you in part of your packet. So what happened? So what's happening today is, and what they're going to do again on Monday, is they're going to bring a list of officers to the board, and the board basically will just take their word for it, and they will ratify the certification. But in fact, the director has no right to make the certification. The board, by statute, must issue the certifications, not the director. The director has been wrongly issuing those certifications, and then having a totally uninvolved board ratify. So your problem here is, and that's on the surface of it, you say, oh, an administrative error. Well, it's much more serious than that, because as soon as you get into the grounds for issuing the certification, they're not meeting it, because there's a whole host of requirements for an officer to become certified which aren't being met.
Such as?
Well, for example, is the way the certification process works in this state, they get certified basically because the officers pass the law enforcement officer competency exam. That's, if they can pass that exam, what they do is they will give them the certification.
I'm sorry, just so I make sure I understand.
Okay.
So for example, an APD cadet
Yeah.
goes through the training academy,
Absolutely.
goes through his proficiency exams as far as the tactical stuff, and then sits and takes a written
At the
competency
very
exam.
end, at the end of the course.
Right.
Right
Takes-
before graduation.
Takes the competency exam. If they pass it, that person goes on a list that goes up to the LEA board, and the executive director passes that on to the board to be.
That's the way it should work. But in fact is, the director, today, wrongly, the director issues the certification
Before it's ratified.
before it's ratified by anybody.
Okay.
You can just look at the certificate, the date is the date the class ended. That's long before the board meets. What makes this so serious is, this is not just an administrative thing. It's what happened in 2013 also is they broke the process totally. So what happens is, they're taking an exam. The exam prior to that point was developed through using the post process, where the exam is tied to the content of the curriculum, and the curriculum was developed in accordance with the process.
Okay.
So what happened in 2013 was Jack Jones, the newly appointed director by Gordon Eden, came in and he attacked the curriculum. He was the director, he had no legal right to do so. He modified the curriculum. Now you had a curriculum that didn't match the test. He had a problem. The solution to Director Jack Jones's problem was to start teaching the test. So now you get, and that's part of the lawsuit is the instructors were bitter about that. They said, you can't force us to teach the test. That's part of the reason that he fired them, because they wouldn't teach the test. But he couldn't do what he wanted to as long as they refused to teach the test. So now they started teaching the test. Well, that wasn't enough, so then what they started to do is they started modifying the test. See, originally the curriculum traces to a job task analysis. That is then captured in the curriculum. The curriculum is validated by the test, the LEOCE. All of that whole process has been thrown right in the trash. So what happens today is they have illegally gone in and modified the test to get the yield rate up. If you don't get all your officers passing the test, they modify the test.
So
Until they get.
what test are we talking about that
You're
applies
talking
to APD officers who've already gone through the training academy and have received their
The
certification?
law enforcement officer, they've all taken the LEOCE or they wouldn't be commissioned officers.
So the competency exam.
Yeah.
So, and that occurs after they've graduated the academy?
Mostly.
I mean, sure, if you're a new officer, you aren't going to take that
Yes,
test
it's
before.
usually tied to graduating from the academy.
Right, okay.
It's either the cadet academy or the certified waiver program, which also comes out of the academy.
But
Out of your academy.
when your question before about the process, and Member Galloway described sending up the certification from the academy to the board for approval, you said that was okay.
They don't.
Was there a missing step?
Okay. Yeah, perhaps, well, I know this is confusing. It took me a while. So what happens is, they take a test.
They,
The cadets, the APD cadets, thank you. The APD officer cadets.
what's the name of the test?
The test is the Law Enforcement Officer Competency Exam.
Okay.
It's to establish their competency as officers, right? That's the,
They take a competency test.
okay, and then it's a multiple choice test.
Okay.
If they get a score above 70,
Okay.
okay, then they're considered qualified to be given a certification. But if you read the statutes since 1993, what that should do is generate from your local director, which is, I think, is Angie Bird, is your current APD director.
Training academy, yes.
APD director, Angie Bird. Angie, by the way, is one of the people that could have been listed in the lawsuit because she helped to destroy the curriculum in 2013. Angie's got part of the destructory. So what happens is that by statute, all the director can issue, the law enforcement academy director can do at that point, is the officers are entitled to get a certificate of completion, not a law enforcement certification. It's a certificate of completion.
After they pass the competency.
After they pass,
LAOC.
that's
Or
all,
LEAs.
what they're entitled to do is get a certificate of completion. That's
Right.
all the director is allowed to issue under the law.
Okay,
So what happens is, that becomes part of a packet, which is, did they pass the fitness and da-da-da-da, right? There's a lot of other stuff that in addition to the LAOC. That should get, all those boxes should get checked to the board, and the board issues the certification, a law enforcement certification. That's not the way it's working. It's not working that way at all.
So the board should be reviewing each individual's cadet's
Or they-
packet?
Or they should have, there should be a packet, if you look at the APD training policy, it calls for preparing a packet for certification.
Uh-huh.
This is not this is happening.
Okay,
They should be sending a packet up for certification. It should go to the board, and the board should vote as when the board votes that the certification is fact.
so now we're getting into something that I think may be a part of something we can review and look at.
Right.
That's where I'm interested in, because we
Okay.
are gonna run out of time.
Yeah.
This is all super fascinating, and it sounds like there definitely is a problem, but
Huge.
it's a problem that we don't have any control over or say in. Now,
Okay.
let me
Okay, sure,
continue
go
going by saying, if there is an SOP for the training academy that says this is the information that needs to be provided, these are the things the cadets need to go through. If there is a problem within that policy, that's something that we can certainly take a look at. Is that what you're saying? Is the problem within the APD policy?
The policy that I just mentioned earlier on public comment,
Uh-huh.
6.1, is part of that policy.
Okay, and that policy you're saying in and of itself is problematic?
It's problematic, and I don't think they're even doing it.
Okay,
There's no evidence they're even doing it.
okay.
And when you send it up to the LEA board, what you're ending up with here in Albuquerque and across the state, of course your concern is Albuquerque is, these officers have certifications that going back to 1993 are bogus. They're being done in an illegal process. And you're just caught up in this. You're just caught up in this. Now, one thing I've suggested to you in my documents is, one thing that if I were you, I would be having a really hard talk with that director of APD, because she clearly would know that this is
Of
going
the
on.
training academy?
Your
Commander
APD
Bird?
training academy. She certainly would know what's going on.
Okay.
She's very tight with the LEA, always has been, and this is going down. She knows about it. So she needs to have a really serious talk. The other thing, if I were you, and how do, because I dealt with this problem, like, how do I get the law enforcement academy board to correct the academy up there? Because the basic curriculum is flawed. What you could do, this is what I would do after you. I would consider putting people in the classes. And the first class, I would put somebody in, and with you in your position, I don't see why you couldn't do this. Put somebody into the class that teaches the test. There's a 4-hour block right before the academy comes down and gives a quote independent test. Why do they have a 4-hour block right before that? Put somebody in that class, and then you'll know what's going on, and then you can speak from authority. Because what they're doing in that 4-hour block is they're teaching the cadets how to pass that test. So it's not a measure of competency. And if
What does that mean, teach the test? Because it's a multiple choice test. So does that mean the answer to number 1 is C, the answer to number 2 is, or is it a review
yes,
of,
if you read this,
like how bad is it, or how blatant?
I haven't sat in that class, nor will I ever, because they won't allow me to. But if I were you, I would want to go sit in that class, and the other class I would rush right over and want to sit into. You've got an officer survival course, which I refer to as Paranoia 101, or how the officer survives and the citizens don't. It's like, you've got an 80-hour officer survival course. The mandated course coming out of Santa Fe is 8 hours. What are you doing with that class? And you should know that in detail, because there's 80 hours there that could be provoking an awful lot of mischief and mayhem and murder. I mean, I would really worry about that class if I were you. And the other one, there's a whole list of things which could be discussed at some other time. The other thing that should be brought to your attention is that ever since 1993, the fitness examination discriminates against women and those over 30. They just hacked the fitness in 2013. It was always based on Cooper standard, which is the nationwide fitness standard, which is graded for sex and age. They just tore it up and threw it in the trash. There is no legal support for that fitness exam.
And they, again, is the
It's the Law Enforcement
Academy in Santa Fe.
There is no legal support for that current fitness. You could, any woman who chose to sue you over that would have a valid suit.
So all law enforcement agencies throughout the state are all trained in the same academy? I didn't think that that's how it was at all.
No, they are not.
They're certified, but they're not trained.
They're all trained differently.
No,
In their own,
they're trained in,
Their own
APD officers
academies.
are trained in APD Academy.
Uh-huh.
And then, but they're required to pass the certification.
Does that have
state.
does that have the effect of standardizing the academies statewide?
To some extent, but I mean, that I think is what part of the question is here.
And
I
something
mean,
tells
I think that's the intent.
But when we went to our training academy, that there was something that said that APD and Rio Rancho adopted the curriculum of the law enforcement academy in Santa Fe.
They have to adopt the base curriculum.
Yeah, I feel like it was more that they adopted it, and then there were certain areas that they added additional hours to.
That's correct.
And that's
Yeah.
normal, I think. I mean,
So-
APD certainly does that.
Okay.
And which would make sense. I mean, if they're supposed to be certified out of Santa Fe.
So
with that
when we're
curriculum.
talking about an 80-hour officer survival course, that's APD has that, or who has
Well,
that?
okay, the way it works with the officer survival course, it's mandated under the basic academy.
You said 8 hours, right?
All these now 10 academies in the state, all are bound to follow the basic academy, which is about 670 hours. Your Albuquerque Academy is currently 1107. What they're supposed to do by law, but never happens in fact, is every course that the APD chooses in addition to the basic academy must be certified by the director of the Law Enforcement Academy. And it should be documented in accordance with the post standards, the nationwide standards, job task analysis, followed upon development. All that package should go up and be supported before the director approves that course. It is not happening. And what this suit law says, it's not happening.
Okay.
It all got trashed in 2013.
So the 80-hour survival course
Yeah.
is something that's happening at the APD Academy.
Yes,
And the
only
4-hour
APD.
block is something that's happening at the APD Academy.
We're teaching to the test.
There's two things that you're bringing to us, the 4-hour block of teaching the test,
Oh, the
and
four.
the 80-hour survival
The-
course are we being specific that this is APD's?
Okay,
Academy?
Yes.
The APD Academy, now I provided here the current APD 120 in part of your packet, has a 4-hour block. And by the way, it's mandated within your 6.1 policy, for the training policy for APD training, that they must have a 4-hour block to teach the test. So you would think that this was cast in stone. It isn't. None of this is happening in 2013. It's not that they had to do that to make it work. They had to do that so that Jack Jones could change the curriculum and pass the test, even though the test didn't match the curriculum anymore. This whole thing got totally corrupted in 2013. The only academy today that does not teach the test, bless their heart, is Las Cruces. Does not, by choice, teach the test. They actually teach the students and rely upon them to pass the test from the material that's been presented to them. They're the only honest academy left in the state. The rest of them are all teaching the test.
Could we keep this focused on what's pertinent to APD though? I mean,
What's pertinent to APD is, right now, every officer that has been commissioned in this APD since 2013 has been commissioned in violation of state statutes. And unless you change, you will continue to certify officers in violation of the law.
Well,
no.
so APD doesn't certify
Let's phrase this
Okay.
correctly.
Okay.
Unless APD changes,
Okay.
APD will continue to certify officers in violation of the law. Is that what you're trying to say?
What I'm saying is, unless the APD right now, in my reading, the only honest academy right now is Las Cruces. APD is knowingly violating the law in collusion with the law enforcement bureau.
And
They're all violating the statutes.
Whose obligation is it to enforce the statute?
I actually think it's the obligation of any police officer to enforce the statutes. This is the law of the state.
Okay.
The other thing that Peter just reminded me of, and part of the issue I would raise with you, you've got two outstanding problems that are worse. All the rest of it is a total mess. Even worse, you've got two classes.
Would you please not say you?
Oh, it is an Albuquerque APD, right? Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. I wouldn't want to be too closely tied to this mess. But anyway.
I think we want to be clear about
Clear for the record.
what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're defined as an independent agency,
Yeah.
so even though we're coming out of the city of Albuquerque, we are independent.
I just happen to, probably the reason I agreed to come out here today is I think, hopefully, that you have slightly more input to the process than I have as a citizen from Santa Fe to what's going on in the Albuquerque Police Department. You ought to, if not, you shouldn't be here either. But there's two classes in particular that even worse than all the rest. You've got two classes, APD number 113 and APD class 160, which
116 or 160?
116, that's in your packet. The 113 and 116 that have never even gone through the certification process that they're using today. They were those classes in APD
Have not gone through the LEA certification.
They were given certifications by the LE director in violation of statutes, but furthermore, ordinarily, they would go before the board and be, quote, ratified. They never went before the board.
Okay, and let's talk about the board. I've been to an LEA meeting, it's been several years, and as I recall, it's made up of primarily law enforcement, sheriffs and other people around, law enforcement people around the state.
That is true.
And so and the Attorney General, I believe, is the chair of that board. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yes, he is.
Okay.
You have one APD person currently on the board.
And so in order for the board to hear what these ratifications or certifications, it has to be presented by the director to the board, and that presentation is not being made. Is that what you're saying?
If they were to follow the statutes, then what the director would present to the board was a certification packet, which would include a certification of completion, which it is his duty by law to provide. But he would bring the packet to the board, and the board, upon due examination, would decide whether they were going to issue certifications. That's as the
So it has to be presented first to the director. I mean, the packet should be submitted from APD to the director. The director should then submit that packet to the board.
Yes. And there's never going to be that for 113.
I'd like to hear your, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What I think he's forgetting to tell you is that there's no record that Class 113 and 116 was ever even presented to the board to be certified. So they're on the streets with, you know, a gun and a badge, and they're not certified.
They have certifications, but certifications mean are bogus.
I'm not sure. What's your name, sir?
I'm sorry, Peter St. Cyr, ST,
Okay.
grade.
Remember, you sent us some information previously, I think.
did?
I think so.
So,
Your
I
name
have a
sounds
question.
familiar, and in this realm.
Okay.
Like, I mean, it does still sound to me like it's largely administrative error. Because, so they take the competency examination, they're entitled to a certificate of completion. The certificate of completion becomes a part of a packet.
Which supports certification.
And then the packet is transmitted from the director's hands to the hands of the board members. But you have not told me what is included in this packet that is essential to gaining certification.
What's included in the packet is defined in your policy number 6.1 of the APD.
It's not our policy.
Yeah. APDs, well, let's just pull up that policy.
Yeah, well, I mean,
This is all defined. This is the way the law reads.
well, what I'm saying is like, what's important that is
Oh,
missing?
well, let's say it's important enough that they changed the law in 1993.
What is important that is missing? What is not going to the board? What is in that packet that they're not getting? What is the packet comprised of?
I don't care if the only thing in that packet is the certificate of completion. By law, there must be a packet that has the certification of completion in it presented to the board, and that's not happening.
And
And it's important enough that they
and what
change the
makes
law.
what makes this like administrative error though so alarming?
Well, let me
is,
say,
like,
the reason, prior to 1993, the director issued certificates which were ratified by the board. The legislature of this state found it significant enough that that was not working, that they changed the law. The law today is the director issues, or the director of your academy, or the director of any, they get a certificate of completion, which is provided to the board, who after due consideration issues the certification. If that wasn't important, why did they change the law?
Can I ask a question or two?
Yeah.
If this is a change in the state law,
Yes.
why then are you not having the state's attorney general enforce the law?
Because he enforces whatever he wishes. He is fully aware of this.
Okay.
I've been briefing them on this. They just don't, they will never address the questions. They just ignore you.
Could inaction be action, meaning that this is simply an administrative process that's necessary to facilitate the volume of officers that come through the process when the board does not meet on such a regular basis?
Well, sir, you're just forming useless questions.
Excuse me, I'm asking,
Okay.
if this is a law
Yes,
that the state attorney general is choosing not to enforce,
yes.
then is it in fact a violation?
You're saying, is the law a law if the state attorney general doesn't choose to enforce it? I think it is, yes. He may be committing malfeasance. That is
Okay.
within his purview.
So then your solution is your solution then that this board take on the task of having 1/2, 3/4, all of APD's officers decertified, so there is no law enforcement in the city of Albuquerque?
You're just, what kind of mischief are you making here? I didn't suggest any such thing.
Then what is your,
Why
then
don't
what
I offer
is,
you speculative questions?
then what is the remedy?
The remedy is to follow the law, which is not being done. Follow the law, that's all I'm
But
saying.
the following the law needs to be done by the LEA Academy and board, right?
And the APD Academy. You're all bound to follow the law.
Okay.
All law enforcement is sworn to the law.
So we and APD don't certify the officers. The officer certification comes from the LEA board, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so going into, it's no longer 6-1, it's, just so you have for your records, it is now 1-94. Okay, just so you know,
No,
that's
and
just
for your
all, yeah.
information, whenever I try to get to that policy, what I get is 6-1.
Yeah, it is labeled there, but it's formerly, and it's up for review and all of that
And
good
it's
stuff.
like,
So,
it's very confusing.
and it is very old. You're right. It says that its last effective date was 6/14/16. And in theory, this stuff should be done annually, correct?
Right, but
So-
that's typical, so it's
Yeah, no,
it's
I
not
know,
unusual.
but it is out of date, and it hasn't been reviewed in a while. So-
Let me just bring this back to your basic question is it the responsibility? I don't think it's the responsibility of this board to enforce the law, but I think it is the responsibility of sworn law enforcement officers to enforce the law. And if the Attorney General is choosing not to enforce the law, that doesn't mean the law can't be enforced. It means that all people who are sworn to the law, as the officers are, ought to enforce the law. And that includes your APD director. She ought to enforce the law. And if the LEA director chooses not to follow the law, then it's her duty to call him on it, because it is the law. And if laws mean nothing, then we should throw them all in the trash, which is what they're trying to do. And forget this game. But it is their duty to enforce the law. It is your APD director's duty to enforce the law, and she's not doing it. Have her do it.
I appreciate what you're saying. I just I can't conceive of a possible path forward for us. I mean, that's my fundamental problem is, and like, I know that when we first started talking about this, I was raising the same issues Chair Galloway is raising, which is essentially that this is, the Law Enforcement Academy is a separate body over which we have no jurisdiction. And when it comes to APD, what we're able to do is, like, make recommendations for policy changes, and we're able to do some stuff with training. But I'm not getting any clear sense of how to be involved in a possible solution for this body.
I gave you three recommendations, which apparently didn't stick.
Lay
One
them out
is-
one more time.
Right. Go first. Put somebody in the class that's teaching the test.
At the LEA Academy?
Yes.
That would be at their discretion if they would allow a civilian
Well,
to do that.
if they won't allow you to sit in their courses, in their classes, I think the right of any citizen to sit in their courses unless there's a danger to the cadets.
Okay,
I-
so
I
that's
think-
your first recommendation.
The second recommendation I believe I made was sit in the officer survival course, because that's a very dangerous course potentially. Find out what's going on in that course.
Okay.
You basically need to find out what's going on at your own academy, at the APD Academy. The APD Academy. You need to find out what's actually going. Go across the street and find out what the hell they're actually doing. They're not doing what you think they're doing. And lastly, I mentioned is, you've got a serious issue with the fact that they illegally changed the requirements for women in 2013, and there is no support. Your current requirements for women and those over 30, your physical fitness requirements, are not supported by any law.
And that's APD or the LEA
The
Academy?
whole damn system.
Okay.
And how do those three recommendations resolve your issue with the certification at the LEA?
Well, what I have suggested, which apparently no one wants to hear, is that you have an issue with the ABD training, and you have an issue with the Albuquerque police force in general. And anyone should have an issue with their police force, their local police forces. Why don't you insist, as officers sworn to the state law, that the Law Enforcement Academy follow that state law, which you're not currently doing?
We aren't officers sworn.
No,
He
I-
means
I said-
APD,
I
and
know,
you know.
but he doesn't say that, and.
Okay.
And you're asking us to do something.
No, I'm
That was-
asking-
That was the question.
I'm suggesting-
So let me finish. So one was sitting in the teaching to the test class. One was sitting in on the officer survival class. And the third one was, I don't know what the suggestion was,
But
but
take a-
it had to do with physical fitness requirements
Yes.
having been changed. What is it that you're suggesting that we do regarding your
First-
third point?
First off, get convinced that I'm right. You apparently aren't.
Can we, well, I'm trying to clarify what it is you
Here's
need, what your solution is. I'm trying to clarify what your solution
Okay,
is.
the third-
And you won't let me finish a question before you start responding. So one was sitting in the teaching to the test class. One was sitting in on the 80-hour survival class.
Yeah.
The third one has to do, you brought up the subject of physical fitness. What is it that you're asking us to do in that particular situation?
There are physical fitness standards,
Yes, I
which
understand.
which are across the academy system.
I understand.
Those standards were changed in 2013.
I understand.
Prior to that point, they were based upon a national standard, the Cooper standard.
I understand.
Right.
They took those standards without proper hearing, no sort of proper hearing. They just took those standards and changed them in a way that disadvantaged women cadets and disadvantaged those over 30.
Okay, that's the situation.
suggestion
Now, what are
is-
you suggesting?
Okay, what I'm suggesting is that this is an issue that should be pushed because you right now,
Push how?
you,
Do what specifically?
what you're at risk of today, which should occasion some, what,
Not worried about the risk. I want to know what we want to do.
What would you like us to do? Like,
what
if you had your
What would you
way?
like us to do?
okay, what you need to do, and what they voted to do back in 2014 and never did, was go back to the Cooper standards. They're legal. The standards you're running today for fitness are not legal.
Okay, we aren't running those standards.
You are,
Well, that is something.
Because you're asking us as a board to do something, and you're confusing us with APD.
Okay, raise these concerns with the APD training director.
Okay.
Raise the concern,
Yeah.
all right.
I think that the last one is something I could imagine an action around, which would be, first have the conversation and then, potentially if we get to that point, we could make a recommendation that they return to a prior standard. That's something that's like within our wheelhouse, is to make a recommendation there, potentially upon review, et cetera,
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a good, we certainly could take the opportunity to take a look at that, proactively take a look at that SOP,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
194 SOP, and just see, because it's been so long since it's been
Yeah.
reviewed.
It's a valid concern for this subcommittee because the nationwide research shows that women police officers and those over 30 are less violent and better community policemen. So it would just be, Albuquerque should want to have more women. They should want to have more police over 30 because there's more stable cops. Now the problem is, what we've done with no legal basis, start discriminating against the very people that you would prefer to have in community policing. This is something that you could change that policy. Let's say if Albuquerque set out to change that policy, there is no way that the Law Enforcement Academy can defend themselves because they can't defend the change they made.
So did you send us, as part of this information, the statistics about women officers and more mature
I don't have
officers?
my hand, sure, of course. but-
If you could send that to us, that would be interesting. Or I don't know if you guys want, but I'd be
Yeah,
interested in
yeah,
reading
totally.
that.
Yeah,
And then, I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel like
Yes,
tackling that
yeah.
194 policy. It's 60 pages long, so if we do it, I think we should break it up. It's clearly no rush to.
I'd be happy to support anybody can, but I'm saying is, but realize that the reason I opened the way I did today was to realize, you are in the middle of a train wreck. We're trying to patch a couple of wheels. This thing train wrecked back in 2013. Overall, I'm going to be talking to the Academy again on Monday and trying to encourage them to move back to a legal basis of operation. That's what those people in 2013, those well-intentioned men said, you have run off the tracks, you've got to move back to a legal basis of operation, and they terminated them. That's what and we paid the citizens of New Mexico, paid $650,000 because they terminated them. Those people were right.
Okay,
Thank you for your attention.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm really sorry because I can't imagine us figuring out a way to resolve this certification stuff from where we stand. I think it's an issue that's just outside of our scope of activities, unfortunately, but.
And that's not to say that it's not an important topic to discuss or to advocate for, but it's just not our purview.
That's why I suggested things that are a bit outside the box. I'm saying is, it seems to me that if you, as members of this board and this committee, then you ought to have a right to go sit in some of these classes. And if
Okay,
you
yes,
don't-
but
So,
let me finish. God.
I'm always afraid we're
So
gonna run out of time.
my but is that I do think we can, approach APD and potentially ask to sit in those parts of their curriculum and see, see if there's anything to be addressed there or not. And so those are things that we might be able to, take some action on. The certification thing, I'm not really seeing a path forward for us, but the other stuff potentially. So,
Okay,
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks
Yeah.
for your time.
and
Yes.
we've all got a problem, let's see if we can work on it.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.